In this episode, we're going to be testing ourselves with some social studies. Circle the correct response for each item. Number 1. Which mountain is not located in St. Catherine? Is it Mount Diablo, Juan de Bolas, or the Mayday Mountains? Now I'm going to go with the Mayday Mountains, as the Mayday Mountains would be associated with Manchester, but Mount Diablo and Juan de Bolas would be associated with St. Catherine. Use figure 1 to answer test items number 2 to 4. Look at figure 1, and here we have the continents and they are colored. Now, which continent is shaded red? Is that South America? Is that Europe? Or is that Africa? And we all know that this would be Africa. All right. So let's take the opportunity now to go through these continents here. So it would be North America, South America, we would have Europe, we have Africa, we have Asia, and we have Australia. Now, some things that I always remind students to take note of would be, this is Madagascar, and this would be New Zealand. All right, so those are some major islands that are there. Of course, we know that this would be Japan. We have the Caribbean region here. We would have the Atlantic Ocean. We would have the Indian Ocean. The Pacific Ocean would be on either side, because if this was a globe, then it would be in one, but this is a flat representation. So we have the Pacific Ocean on the left here and on the right here, and then we would have the Arctic Ocean, and then below here we have the Southern Ocean. All right, so number 3, which color represents the continent from which the Chinese indentured laborers came? And that would be here from Asia. Based on what we saw in our textbooks, coming from China, they would have come across into the northern sections of Africa, and then they would have taken boats over into the Caribbean region. All right, so that should be blue. So C, blue. Again, which color represents the location of the Yangtze River? Is it green, blue, or red? Again, it would be blue, because this is a major river associated with Asia. Number 5, which ocean did the ships with Africans most likely journey on the way to the sugar plantations in the West Indies? Would it be the Atlantic, the Indian, or the Arctic? So let's go back. So if this is Africa, generally speaking, and most of our ancestors would have come from Western Africa, right? So the Caribbean has mostly Africans, so most of them would have come from Western Africa. So the ocean between Africa and the Americas, because slaves came to North America, Central and South America, so it would be the Atlantic Ocean. All right, let's go with number 6. Which municipality has only a mayor that was elected during the last local government election? Is that Mandeville, Portmore, or Falmouth? And I would want to go with Portmore in this instance. All the others, Mandeville has a parish council, and Falmouth would be a parish council as well. So I want to lean with Portmore, because Portmore is officially referred to as the municipality of Portmore. Number 7, which is the largest ocean? And that would be the Pacific. Okay, not the Atlantic, not the Indian, but the Pacific Ocean. Let's go to 8. it says circle A or B to indicate whether each right supports or does not support the statement. Now it says here, based on the Constitution of Jamaica, citizens have rights. We have a right to receive public education, and that supports it. So we would go with A here. Freedom of speech, that supports it. Board any plane without a passport, that's not supported. Okay. Own property, that would be supported. But boarding a plane without a passport, that is not a right that you have, because there are visa restrictions for some countries, for example the United States, and to another extent Europe and many other places in the world. You have to get a visa in order to visit these places. Number 9, explain the difference between the executive and the legislative arm of government. All right, so remember that we have 3 arms of government. We have the judiciary, we have the legislature, and we have the executive. Now the executive arm of government will be that arm that deals with the running of government, the day-to-day operations of government. That arm includes the prime minister and members of the cabinet and the advice that is given by the attorney general. So that's the executive arm. The legislative arm now would be that arm of government that has the 63 members of parliament and the 21 senators, right? That is the arm that does what? That would create laws, while the judiciary would seek to what? Maintain and implement those laws via the use of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, for example. All right, so remember, executive government, day-to-day activities and programs and policies. The legislative arm, they will deal with the laws, making laws with regards to that. Okay. Number 10, explain the difference between the roles of the House of Representatives and the House of Senate. All right, so the House of Representatives would have the 63 members of parliament that would have been elected via a general election. All right, so in a constituency, someone says, hey, I want to represent this constituency. They are associated with a political party, generally speaking, either the People's National Party or the Jamaica Labour Party, or they can be independent, but that is not normally the case, right? And then they would be duly nominated, and then if the citizens of that constituency choose that person via a general election, then they would represent the constituency in the House of Representatives. Now there are 63 different constituencies in Jamaica, so we have 63 members of parliament. So the prime minister is a elected member of parliament. All right, so too must the minister of finance. He must be an elected member of parliament. Okay, now the House of Senate has 21 members, 13 for the governing side and 8 for the opposing side. So in this case, if the PNP is in power, they will have 13 and the JLP will have 8. And if it's the other way around, then the JLP in power, they would have 13 and the PNP would have 8. Why is this so? Because when laws are being passed, when they go through the House, the lower house, the House of Representatives, they need to have a 2/3 majority to pass the lower house. Now, depending on how the seats are distributed, you may have one party having a 2/3 majority. You know, that's quite possible. We could have 63 MPs coming from either of the political parties. However, when it gets to the Senate, there is the opportunity for a check and balance in that regard, because in the Senate, the government side can only have one less than 2/3 a majority. Now, 2/3 a majority in the upper house or senate would be 14, because 2/3 of 21 would be 14. So they have to have one less than that majority. So they won't have 14, they will have 13. And then the opposition will have the other number to complete the 21. So in this case, one side will have one less than 2/3, and then the other side will have 1/3 plus 1. All right. So in that case, the opposition will have 8 members. They would have had 1/3, which would have been 7, because 1/3 of the 21 would be 7, and they have a third plus 1. Now, what does this do? It prevents laws being passed that not all Jamaican citizens could have the opportunity to agree with, because the opposition should take the concerns of their constituents into consideration when they are going to vote on any particular law. So let us say that one party decided that, listen, all women who have a straight nose should be put in prison, and everybody in the lower house agrees, right? When that gets to the upper house, someone, could say, hey, this does not make sense. And as long as one person is not willing to vote on it, it cannot be passed. Why? Because they need our 2/3 majority. They need 14 people to vote for it in order for it to be passed. And if it is, the opposition says none of us will vote for it, then it can't be passed. Okay, so that is one way in which the House of Representatives and the House of Senate are different. Another way in which they are different, not only in the role that they have or the number that they have, but also in the function. Functionally, one is a rubber stamp. When we did the previous video, they say one is a rubber stamp for the other. So the House of Senate would be the rubber stamp for laws coming from the House of Representatives. All right, I hope that captures the difference between the roles of the representatives, the House of Representatives, and the House of Senate. Number 11, it says list the courts to which the judiciary administers justice. Now there are several levels. Some of them include the Petty Sessions Court. You would have the resident magistrates courts or the parish courts. You would have the Supreme Court. You would have the Court of Appeals, right? And in our Jamaican setting, you can also appeal to the Caribbean Court of Justice and the UK Privy Council. But by and large, those the last two are for special circumstances. All right. Outside of that, we have special courts such as the Gun Court and so on that deal with specific cases. But Petty Session Court, RM Courts, the Supreme Court, and the Court of Appeal, those are the major courts to which the judiciary administers justice. Number 12, explain the responsibility of the judiciary. Now, the judiciary will look at the laws that have been passed by the government, and then they will make sure that those laws are being enforced through the Jamaica Constabulary Force. So if there's a law that says you should not turn right at a particular intersection, and the police sees you breaking that law, then you can be given a fine in the form of a ticket. Okay, and so the ticket will tell you how much you need to pay for breaking the law, or you can be brought to court, where a judge will now decide whether or not you should be given a greater fine for disobeying the law of the land. Another way, we're not supposed to litter. So I'm driving along the road, I can't just have my garbage thrown through the window. We should actually take a bag inside our car and put our litter in the bag, and at an appropriate location remove the bag and place it in a bin. So the law is important, and it is the responsibility of the judiciary to enforce. That means when you come before the court, they decide how the law will be applied to you in terms of fines, sanctions, imprisonment, and so on. Number 13, list the two arms of the municipalities. Now, there is an administrative arm and there's a political arm. So the political arm would have the councillors who represent the different divisions that make up a particular area, and then the administrative arm would have the persons who work for the parish councils and the municipalities. So number 14 is the roles of the municipalities. They are responsible for taking care of certain essential things in a parish. For example, there are certain parochial roads that they take care of. They make sure that the markets are clean. They make sure that the street lights in a particular area, public areas, are taken care of as well. They also deal with the inspection of meat and to make sure that, you know, places are clean and food establishments are up to a certain standard. Use the information to answer test items 17 to 18. Sydney, Australia would be 33 degrees south and 115 degrees east. State how you would read the information to a visitor. We just did that. You would say that Sydney, Australia is located at 33 degrees south, and that would be the latitude, and the longitude would be 151 degrees east. So it is latitude before longitude. Now, latitude measures angular distance north and south of the equator, while longitude will measure angular distance east and west of prime meridian. Number 16 says name the type of location given and explain your response. So for this would be your absolute location, in that this is a specific point on the face of the earth. All right, so this is absolute location, and it can technically get more specific than this. It could be 38 degrees, and they go into how many minutes and seconds to be more specific. So this is absolute location. Now, relative location is where you are in relation to something else. For example, I could be standing next to the clock in Maypen. I could be standing next to the clock in Halfway Tree. I could be standing next to the clock in Lucy, right? So you are giving your location with reference to something else. Now, there are many clocks all over the country. So if you were just to say, hey, you know, I'm standing next to the clock, which clock? You understand? I could be, again, in Maypen, there's a clock in Chapelton, there's a clock in Halfway Tree, there's a clock in Lucy. And there are many other parishes that would have clocks there. So that would not be enough. But when we use this reference system here, that gives us specifically degrees north and south of the equator and degrees east and west of prime meridian, it is an absolute location. You can pinpoint that place even from space using that particular reference system. Now, this is very important for GPS, and I'll give you one way or two ways that we can use GPS. GPS stands for Global Positioning System, and there is an array of satellites that will be used to be able to pinpoint these places on the face of the earth. How is that used? One, we use it for navigation. So we have navigation systems in the car, and if you want to go to a specific place, you may not know where you're going, but using GPS, you're able to get there safely. Two, fishermen use GPS beacons, so if they get lost at sea, they can send out a signal via that beacon so that rescue operators such as the Coast Guard or other fishermen will be able to hone in and to find specifically where they are. So again, GPS very important, but this system, this global positioning system, cannot work without this reference system underlying it that has to do with degrees, angular distance, north and south of the equator, and angular distance east and west of prime meridian. All right, guys, hope that helps. You can watch the previous videos that we have done on these topics to get a better understanding, and we'll leave a few links in the description section below. Now, in this episode, we were testing ourselves on some of the basic social studies concepts that we have covered so far. Take time, go over these questions with your friends, try and test each other to make sure you have that level of understanding so that you will do well when you come across these concepts once again. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.